The voicemail was 11 seconds long. My mother's voice, thinner than I remembered, said my name, my old name, and then nothing else. I played it 4 times before I let myself breathe. I'm Nora Ashford now. I run a small forensic accounting practice out of a converted warehouse in Minneapolis, the kind of place where I spend my days finding the exact moment someone decided to lie with numbers. I'm 33. I have a cat named Ledger, which my husband thinks is funny and I think is honest. And for 16 years, I had made sure that no one from Elk Hollow, Wisconsin could find me. My mother found me anyway. I grew up on Marsh family orchards, 60 acres of apple trees and a cider mill that put our name on every festival banner in 3 counties. My father built it from nothing. My brother Caleb was supposed to inherit it. I was supposed to disappear into whatever future was left over, and for most of my childhood, I accepted that the way you accept weather. I was 17 the year I started doing the books after school. My father said it would teach me responsibility. What it actually taught me was that the numbers in the ledger didn't match the numbers in the bank statements, and hadn't for almost a year. I brought it to him on a Tuesday, the day before the Harvest Festival, the kitchen smelling like the cinnamon donuts my mother made every year to sell at the booth. I laid the 2 sheets side by side on the table and told him something wasn't right. He looked at the numbers for a long time. Then he looked at me, not at the ledger, at me. I didn't understand what that look meant until the next afternoon, standing in the middle of the festival grounds with 200 of our neighbors watching, when my father put his hand on my shoulder in front of the sheriff's deputy, a man who'd known me since I was 6, and said, "She's been taking from the register. We just found out." "I want to tell you," I said something. I didn't. I stood there in my apron with cider on my hands, while people I'd known my whole life rearranged their faces into pity or judgment, whichever came easier. My mother didn't cry. She watched me the way you watch a scale settle on a number you already expected. What I didn't know that day was why my father hadn't asked me a single question before deciding I was guilty, or why my brother, standing off to the side with his arms crossed, wouldn't look at me at all. I left Elk Hollow 9 months later, the morning after my 18th birthday, with a duffel bag and a manila folder I'd hidden under a loose board in my closet since that Tuesday in the kitchen. I never told anyone what was in it. 16 years later, my mother's voicemail was still playing on my phone when a second call came through. A Wisconsin number I didn't recognize, and underneath it, a text. "This is Caleb's wife. Please call me back. It's about the orchard, and it's about you." I didn't call Emily back right away. I sat with Ledger on my lap and read the text 3 more times. The way you check a door is locked when you already know it is. When I finally called, she answered on the first ring, like she'd been holding the phone. She talked fast, the way people do when they've rehearsed something and are afraid of losing their nerve halfway through. The orchard was 2 payments from foreclosure. My father had suffered a mild heart attack in March and hadn't fully recovered his stamina for the business since. Caleb had taken over the books 8 months ago. Then she paused, and the pause told me more than anything she'd said so far. There was a state agricultural fraud unit asking questions about co-op grant money. Caleb said it was a misunderstanding. She needed someone who actually understood numbers to look at what he'd been doing before it became something they couldn't undo. I asked her why she was calling me instead of a lawyer. "Because your father already told the investigator it was probably a bookkeeping error from before Caleb took over," she said. "He used your name, Nora. He told them to check old records. He's already building the story." I sat very still for a moment. 16 years. And my father's first instinct in a crisis was still the same shape it had always been. I told her I needed to think. What I didn't tell her was that I still had the folder. It had moved with me through 4 apartments and 2 states, always in the same box, never opened again after the night I packed it. I hadn't needed to open it. I remembered every page. That folder held the original bank statements from the year I turned 17, the real ones. The ones that didn't match what my father showed the sheriff's deputy. A pattern of cash withdrawals against the festival account, each one within 2 days of a payment to a supplier in Green Bay that, as I'd later learned digging through public records in my 20s, wasn't a supplier at all. It was a man my father owed money to from a card game that ran out of the back of a bar on Route 12. I hadn't understood any of that at 17. I'd only understood that the numbers were wrong, and that telling the truth had cost me everything. Over the next 2 weeks, I asked Emily to send me what she could without Caleb knowing. Vendor lists, deposit records, the co-op grant paperwork. I told myself I was just looking. I told myself I hadn't decided anything yet. What I found stopped me cold. The current discrepancy wasn't identical to the old one, but it rhymed. Grant disbursements routed through a vendor account that didn't correspond to any actual delivery. Withdrawals timed 2 or 3 days after each deposit. Caleb wasn't gambling, Emily told me later. He'd sunk money into an expansion the bank never approved, and he'd been quietly covering the gap since the loan fell through. The difference this time was that nobody was 17. Nobody could be blamed and sent away without consequence. And my father, I realized, was already trying to make sure that if the truth came out, it wouldn't be his signature on the disbursement forms that investigators looked at first. He was going to use my name again. Not because he thought I'd done anything, because it had worked before. I flew into Green Bay on a Thursday and drove the last hour to Elk Hollow with the folder in a briefcase on the passenger seat, like it was a person I'd brought along for backup. The orchard looked smaller than I remembered, the way places from childhood always do, except this smallness wasn't just perspective. Half the north field had gone to seed. The cider mill's sign had a corner peeling loose. My father answered the door in a cardigan, and for a second I didn't recognize him, not because he'd aged, though he had, but because the man who used to fill every doorway he stood in now looked like he was borrowing space in his own house. He didn't apologize. He asked if I'd come to help fix things, and something in the way he said fix made my stomach go tight, because I understood immediately that he meant fix the story, not fix the fraud. At dinner, with Caleb pale and silent across the table and my mother refilling water glasses no one had asked for, my father said it plainly. He told me the investigator had a theory the discrepancies went back years, and that if I could just explain to them how the old bookkeeping system worked, it would clear things up. He said it like a favor he was asking. He said Caleb's name once, gently, the way you protect something breakable. He did not say my name gently. He said it the way he'd said it 16 years ago in front of the sheriff's deputy, like a fact he was stating rather than a person he was talking to. That was the low point. Sitting at that table. Not because I was afraid of being blamed again, because some old, exhausted part of me still wanted him to stop before I made him. He didn't stop, so I didn't either. I told them, calmly, that I'd already reviewed the current grant paperwork. I watched Caleb's face lose whatever color it had left. I told them I also still had the original 1996 bank statements. The real ones, showing where the missing festival money had actually gone, and to whom. My father's expression didn't change right away. That was the strangest part. It took him almost 10 full seconds to understand that the daughter he'd sent away for keeping honest records had spent 16 years still being the only person in that house who kept them. I didn't show him the folder that night. I told him I'd be speaking with the state investigator directly, with documentation, and that I'd already forwarded copies to a friend at a Minneapolis firm who did fraud litigation in case anything happened to the originals before then. He stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. My mother said my name, my old one, like it might still have power over me. It didn't. 2 days later, the investigator called to schedule a formal interview. I told her I'd bring everything. The interview took place in a conference room above the county clerk's office, fluorescent lit and smelling like burnt coffee. I laid out both sets of records side by side, the way I had for my father at that kitchen table 16 years earlier, except this time, no one could put a hand on my shoulder and rewrite what the numbers said. I walked the investigator through 1996 first, the vendor account that didn't exist, the timing of the withdrawals against the poker debt in Green Bay, my father's signature authorizing every disbursement. Then I walked her through the current file, the phantom grant vendor, the withdrawals 2 days behind each deposit, Caleb's initials on forms he later claimed he never saw. My father tried denial first. He told the investigator the old records were incomplete, that a teenager wouldn't have understood the full picture. I asked him, in front of her, whether he remembered telling a sheriff's deputy that his daughter had been taken from the register. He did not answer that question. He answered a different one instead, about how hard those years had been for the family. The investigator wrote something down and did not look up. Caleb cracked faster than I expected. He admitted the expansion loan, the gap he'd tried to cover, the vendor account he'd set up himself, hoping the co-op wouldn't audit that quarter. He never once tried to put it on me. That was the one small mercy in the whole afternoon. My brother, finally, refusing to let silence become a weapon again. My father was charged with falsifying business records tied to the original 1996 misappropriation. Though the statute of limitations meant it mostly mattered for the current case, it established a pattern the prosecutor used to argue against leniency for withholding evidence from investigators now. Caleb faced restitution and probation, not prison, in part because he cooperated and in part because I told the prosecutor, honestly, that he hadn't tried to hide behind me. The orchard sold at auction 4 months later. My mother moved into an apartment in Appleton. I did not attend the closing. I sent Emily and my niece a card instead, because whatever my brother had done, his daughter hadn't done anything, and I remembered too well what it felt like to inherit a family's punishment you didn't earn. I flew home the same night as the interview. Alex met me at the airport with Ledger's photo on his phone, like proof that a small, ordinary life was still waiting for me. I didn't cry on the flight. I kept thinking about the manila folder, how I'd carried it through 4 apartments for 16 years without ever needing to open it, certain someday I would. I was 17 when I learned that telling the truth about a ledger could cost you your family. I was 33 when I learned it could also, finally, give it back to you clean.